Hi, this is lesson 14 on outlaw motorcycle groups. And I had posted it once before, but somewhere along the line it ended up not getting posted, so I don't know what happened. So anyway, I'm going to redo this. Probably be a more synopsized version anyway, so it'd be not as long. So this lesson and lecture PowerPoint is on prison gangs, outlaw motorcycle groups. So this is lesson 14. We're going to start off, we're going to be talking about your prison gangs and then go into outlaw motorcycle gangs. So we going to talk about the objectives. I want you to be able to compare and contrast the MA, or Mexican Mafia, to the Black Guerrilla family, to Nuestra Familia, to the Aryan Brotherhood. Then I want you to be able to list the top 10 prison gangs in the U.S., or at least, let's recognize instead of listing them. I don't want you to have to memorize them. Recognize the top 10 prison gangs in the U.S., and then compare and contrast the Hells Angels, Mongols, and Pagans motorcycle group. So MA is going to be Mexican Mafia. Okay, so this link here on slide 4, I've listed over in this section here the top 13 prison gangs in the United States. You have the Aryan Brotherhood. Then over on this side, you have the areas in which they control. The reason why we put Aryan Brotherhood is because of the amount of numbers that they have. Now they're also going nationwide. You have Mexican Mafia, which it only really has 400 core members, but it has a number of different affiliate and peripheral members in your Hispanic street gang, so that increases their membership and influence. MS-13 is a global gang. They have various amounts of influence here in the United States. Not particularly a lot in the West, even though there is a presence, but most of their influence is back east. And obviously in Central America, where they're dominant. Nuestra Familia, northern Central California. You have Barrio Azteca is a Texas, New Mexico prison gang, and they operate in the Southwest. Black Guerrilla family, California, East Coast. Dead Man Incorporated, it's Maryland, East Coast. NETA is a Puerto Rican prison gang operating mostly in the northeast part of the country. Public Enemy Number 1, or they call themselves PENI, is a national group, and they're white, and they're allied with the Aryan Brotherhood and the Nazi Lowriders. So you can kind of consider Public Enemy Number 1, Nazi Lowriders, and the Aryan Brotherhood, where Aryan Brotherhood is the umbrella agency. Hermanos, I think it's Day instead of Da. Could be wrong there, but yeah, I think it is Day. De Pistoleros Latinos, Texas and Mexico. Your Nazi Lowriders, like I said, they're strong peripheral members of the Aryan Brotherhood. Mexicanemi, Texas, Mexican Mafia. Believe it or not, they do operate in Texas, Mexico. And then the Texas Syndicate really got its start in California, of Texas inmates here. But they're predominantly found in Texas and Mexico. Going back here. Here you have a link. It's an Australian publication, business publication, that talks about where they considered the 10 most or 11 most powerful prison gangs, and it gives you a little background on that. So I thought that would be pretty good for you to look as a resource. You have the Mexican Mafia. So here on link or slide 5, you have a YouTube. It's an extensive YouTube video on the history of the Mexican Mafia, or La M. We know that MA was formed back in the 1950s within the California Department of Corrections. It's one of the oldest, most powerful prison gangs in the United States. Predominantly known for drug trafficking, extortion, and murder, but now they have a number of members or representatives out in society that is continuing the gang's criminal enterprises. Mexican Mafia, or La M, is one of four major prison gangs. Like I said, MA stands for the letter M in the Mexican alphabet. And it originated along the lines for protection, prison protection by Joe Pegleg Morgan. Interesting enough, Joe Pegleg Morgan was not fully Hispanic. He was actually he was of Slavic descent who lived in a barrio in East LA. So identified culturally with the Hispanics and their culture. But he was the leader of the Mexican Mafia for a number of years. Right now, we know that the Mexican Mafia has several criminal enterprises out in society, not necessarily behind prison, but within prison they're involved in narcotics, murder, and extortion. The origins of the gangs goes back to the Dual Vocational Institute. They call it Vacaville. In Tracy, California. It's Northern California, up near the north end of the Central Valley. It was founded back in 1955, 57, in between there. They predominantly, most of the membership came from East LA and that area, where you had 18th Street, White Fence, so on and so forth. And these inmates were being basically harassed and subjugated by the white inmates and Aryan Brotherhood type. So they formed this, what they wanted to call a super gang, where their philosophy was to drop the confrontation and the competition between each other and their street gangs and form one major super gang in prison. Very similar in ethnic cultural makeup. You had to be Hispanic to get into the gang. Most of these gang members all came out of Southern California, or what we would normally call them today as Sureños. And they superseded territorial boundaries so that all these gang members could unite while in prison. So if you came from Bakersfield, if you came from LA, if you came from San Diego, you would be accepted within reason. You had to pass a very strict initiation rite, and I'll talk about that, in order to be allowed entrance into the gang. So, like I said, they formed for gang protection, power in the prison, control of the institution. And what they did by 1959, they established a very strict set of rules and regulations that govern their members even today. By the 60s, the membership increased throughout the California prison system, where they were strong enough to actually confront Aryan Brotherhood and the Black Guerrilla family. Now, I told you before, in the beginning, the initial membership consisted of East LA gang members, Hazard, 38th Street, the Maravilla gangs, Boyle Heights, East LA, White Fence. That was the membership early on in the early beginnings of this group. So they formed where they ended up becoming the dominant Hispanic group in prison. And like I said, they also were in a position where they could challenge the Aryan Brotherhood. So it initiated other assaults on other Hispanic inmates who weren't members of MA. As a result of this attack on other Hispanics, usually coming from Northern California in the agricultural fields where their parents worked the agricultural cycle, if you will. They were looked down upon by the urban Hispanics coming out of LA as a bunch of country bumpkins and of less cultural, if you will, identity. So what happened, these groups from Northern California did the same thing that the Mexican Mafia did and formed their own prison gang for protection against the Black Guerrilla family, Aryan Brotherhood, and La M.A., and they formed Nuestra Familia. And you had Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia basically at war with each other, which started in 1968 over a pair of shoes being stolen from one of the groups. And it ended up, led to a violent war that, quite frankly, is still being waged to this day. There is no love lost between these two groups. If they see each other or house together, it's going to result in violent interaction. By the late 60s, early 70s, La M built their reputation outside the prison and began gaining influence on the streets of LA. You found that these OGs, or original gang members, ended up getting out of prison and mainstreaming back into society on parole. So you had a influence of MA gang members back out on the street and going back to their respective gangs, and still having that umbrella group of La M controlling the gangs. Their biggest criminal enterprises were narcotics and extortion, and they also gained influence and control of federal funded programs in the barrio, different government grants that are awarded for business people, education, so on. La M gained influence over those and started to control those and siphoning off those funds. In 1972, the MA leader Rudy Cheyenne Cadena was killed. I believe he was killed in prison. I believe it was in Chino, and that led to further violence. So you had this constant war forming between Nuestra Familia and La M, or the Mexican Mafia. So the war continues. Like I said, it's just like any type of conflict you would see internationally, where people have been fighting for religious or cultural reasons, and they continue to battle this day. And probably couldn't even tell you what started it. It's just ingrained in the culture now, and that's the way it is between Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia. In '76, the Mexican Mafia went through a change with their leader, Robert Robot Salas, and he initiated several changes in the local operations, particular criminal enterprises, which weren't very happy with some of the original members. So there was a lot of infighting going on. In 1982, you had the Folsom riots and wars between MA and the Black Guerrilla family. So it resulted in conflict that leaves a lot of people dead on both sides. There was a split in '84 and '86. There was a faction with Joe Pegleg Morgan and Ernie Kilroy Roybal. And Morgan was upset with Roybal because Roybal took it upon himself to reach some type of anti-violence agreement with the Folsom warden to end the war with BGF, and Morgan didn't like that, so he took exception. So the group kind of split as far as their allegiances for a while. The California prison system, in looking at these different prison groups and how they were taking over and the amount of violence that was occurring between all these, they decided to build a super max level 5 security prison and send all disruptive and violent inmates to this prison where they would live and be housed in virtual isolation. That prison's called Pelican Bay. So you had most of your leadership of all these gang members siphoned off from the individual California prisons and sent up to Pelican Bay. A directive came out in '92 where you had MA, again, organizing street gangs, and their directive was to stop the drive-bys and the inter-gang violence between the Hispanic gangs. And failure to comply by any of these Hispanic gangs would result in severe penalty, usually somebody getting killed. So what happened was the directive was to turn their attention on African American gangs and commit violence on them and not each other. By 1992, you had the leadership housed at Pelican Bay, which opened, and any validated prison gang member is sent to Pelican Bay, which now, quite frankly, is overpopulated, and you don't have that prison doesn't contain all level 5 inmates. There's other lesser inmates now, and it's overcrowded like most of these other prisons. But your hardcore prison leadership is housed in segregated housing and They're on lockdown 23 hours a day, and they can come out for 1 hour for exercise. So that's where they're sent. Your characteristics: it's a self-protecting group like Nuestra Familia, Black Guerrilla family. If you're sent to prison, you are in a position where you have to decide what group you're going to affiliate with. And again, it's ethnocentric. Each one is characteristic of its own ethnicity. So if you're white, you have to go with Aryan Brotherhood or those other affiliate organizations. If you're Hispanic and you come from the South, you're a Sereno, you better hook up with MA. If you're Northern California, then you're going to hook up with Nuestra Familia. So it's a self-protecting group. All of them have developed and morphed into a sophisticated prison operation. And most of the prison enterprises or activity include prostitution, narcotics, gambling, sale of cigarettes, sale of cell phones. The criminal enterprises that are being conducted on the outside are still controlled by the inside, and particularly with the use of cell phones. I mean, that's been big. The prison has since tried to crack down on it, but it's big money to smuggle these things in. So consequently, there's a lot of corruption involved with prison guards smuggling these things in. Now, as other inmates became more disruptive, they were sent to other prisons, and that's where you found the spread and the recruitment of the Mexican Mafia. Same thing with Aryan Brotherhood and Nuestra Familia, but predominantly the Mexican Mafia and the Aryan Brotherhood. But your new memberships recruited through AGSEG, that is administrative segregation, where somebody's been assaultive towards prison guards or has had major violations of prison rules and regulations, and they're sent into administrative segregation, which is basically they're on lockdown and they're in isolation. Mexican Mafia looks at these guys as the ones that they want to recruit that will be good gang members and eventually be full-fledged. So they have to take a blood oath to gain membership, meaning blood in, blood out. In this case, they usually have to commit a hit or at least attempt to murder somebody in prison that's sanctioned and on the list by MA membership. So there's constantly new members getting involved with this, and that's what they aspire to get into. Prerequisite: you have to be a confirmed killer, or at least attempt nowadays, and that's basically because the systems use to blackmail other members because they have that oath of silence. By the 60s, MA controlled heroin trafficking in the prisons, so they have a direct connection now with cartels down in Mexico. So you had your black and white inmates targeted for exploitation, and particularly your other Hispanic inmates from Northern California. Like I said, in order to be dominant with the heroin and methamphetamine production, MA now is allied with Colombian and Mexican drug cartels. MA is used by these cartels to control and participate or assassinate political politicians or people in order to influence elections. They end up using street-level gang members to do that, but the operation and the hit is planned by MA leadership. Right now, there's no clear-cut leader. The leadership is all incarcerated in Pelican Bay. However, they rule by committee more than anything in different individual nodes. We had an individual in San Marcos who was recently arrested last year who had direct links to MA leadership who was living in San Marcos. And he was using Ghost Town or the local San Marcos gang to conduct criminal enterprises on behalf of the Mexican Mafia. He was arrested and he's back in prison again. Your Black Guerrilla family, or BGF, this is their symbols here. This is the Folsom Guard Tower, but nevertheless they have a number of different symbols. According to Wikipedia here, the Black Guerrilla family, They're ideologically based more on an African American Marxist philosophy. It's really kind of a revolutionary organization as compared to your street gang mentality and super gang mentality that the Aryan Brotherhood and the Mexican Mafia had. But they had a manifesto that was written by their leader, and they had stated goals of eradicating racism and maintaining dignity in prison, but overthrowing the United States government and capitalism. So you have a lot of Marxist leaning philosophical ideology, if you will, with the BGF. BGF is predominantly located up in Northern California in the Oakland area. Obviously, they got their start in San Quentin prison by this individual right here, George Jackson. He's the founder of the Black Guerrilla family. This lady here is a former UCLA professor by the name of Angela Davis. And the reason why I included her was, interesting enough, George Jackson, he founded the Black Guerrilla family. Like I say, it's a neo or quasi-Marxist revolutionary group. You just can't pigeonhole them completely into a prison gang. And he ended up attempting to escape where a prison guard was killed. He was captured, and he was going to trial down in San Rafael, up in up in San Rafael, Northern California. And he had a younger brother who enlisted the aid, and quite frankly, he wrote books, George Jackson did. He's a pretty prolific writer. And as you can see here, it's entitled Prison Letters of George Jackson. So a lot of Marxist, socialist bent, and very politicalized. Angela Davis was a professor of, I believe, sociology at UCLA. She was a strong follower and advocate of George Jackson. Well, story has it is that George Jackson's younger brother ended up enlisting the help of Andrea Davis because she was attending the trial, and somewhere along the line a gun was smuggled into the courthouse. George's younger brother ended up taking a judge hostage. That lasted for a little bit. George Jackson wasn't even in the courtroom at the time when all this went down, and long story short, the judge ended up getting killed. George Jackson's brother was killed. He was implicated in the escape attempt. He was killed at some point in time, and it may have been during this escape thing. I can't remember. I'd have to look that up. But anyway, she was implicated, but she was never convicted or charged or indicted. But rumor has it that she was heavily involved and possibly had even smuggled the gun in and handed it off to George Jackson's brother. So, but what he did, he found this black gang, African-American gang, based on protection lines, but also based on revolutionary thought. So this link here is an individual who had some contact and was an associate of George Jackson while he was in prison. This guy's out on the street now. He's kind of a rapper, I guess, lack of a better description. And he talks about a oral musical history of George Jackson in the Black Guerrilla family. Like I said, this prison gang, BGF, or Black Guerrilla family, operates out of San Quentin prison. It was established in 1966, the time of a lot of social turmoil in the United States. And he was killed in a famous escape attempt. So yeah, he was killed during that escape attempt along with his brother when that judge was held hostage, and he was also killed. So that was back in 1972. But like I say, the gang is a quasi-revolutionary group. At the time in their founding, they were allied with the Black Panther Party. We've talked about them with Huey Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, Bobby Seale. So it's bent more on a revolutionary tactics. But while in prison, it is a protection group for black inmates. They initially adopted their ideals from the Black Panther Party. So your early leader, your activists were George Jackson, Patrick Goulden, or he goes by another name of Qatari Golden, Huey Newton, Bobby Seale. So these were all heavy political activists at the time. Also, they took excerpts from Elijah Muhammad, the Black Muslims, or the Nation of Islam. So I think I'll put that there. And this is how they characterize themselves here. So, and then the Black Panther Party. But the bottom line is that's a pseudo-Marxist ideology. It's quasi-revolutionary. The gang is founded on one of their manifestos called Bureaucratic Centralism. And it was based on prison hierarchy at San Quentin, Pelican Bay, and Folsom. So that's how the leadership and the structure of the gang is formed. What's interesting here is every member is required to memorize the objectives of Jackson's manifesto, take an oath, and be able to recite tactics and ideology. So it's a pretty heavy revolutionary slant. Like most of these prison gangs, the leaders hand down directives and they better be followed without question. The BGF is making a comeback. They're associated with, actually it's the new Black Panther Party. So, the Black Liberation Army and Black Muslim ideology. So I mean it has some religious but mostly social and Marxist, Maoist type of ideology. They're predominantly located in Northern California, like I said, Oakland being one of the central areas. But they control narcotics, prostitution, extortion, so that's their principal criminal activities. Now, they do have a major affiliation now with both Crip and Blood gang members, so it's like that same idea with the MA to create a super gang. I don't know how they can get the Crip and Bloods to actually disavow their association. No. The younger members assume power on the streets because your older leaders or the leaders are incarcerated. So these Crip and Blood gangs are the operating arm of the BGF, whose leaders are incarcerated. You have natural prison wars, so they're always in conflict with the Aryan Brotherhood, Nazi Lowriders, and MA. And you'll find that these groups will ally with each other on occasion against the BGF. Now, they do have an occasional alliance with Nuestra Familia. So speaking of Nuestra Familia, you've got a link here for 29 is... 28, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is a YouTube link here that will get you to a fairly in-depth, detailed look on Nuestra Familia through YouTube. Tattoos, you got the Mexican sombrero with a knife or dagger going through it, and then NF, Nuestra Familia, where they may have what you call a norteño tattoo. Like most prison gangs, they're heavily tattooed, but a lot of this is very symbologic. Now, they originated at a Soledad State Prison in 1967, but again, it was in response to pressure and extortion from MA. As they grew in numbers, and most of the membership usually was recruited from the more agricultural areas in the Central Valley in Northern California, but they slowly gained respect. They're very violent, very similar to the Bloods in the fact that they're outnumbered, so that causes them to have to strike out in more violent ways to get their point across. Their headquarters now is in Fresno, California. So they're allied with the major street gang group there of the Fresno Bulldogs. But they have a very distinct organizational structure. They have a constitution, if you will, or even a manifesto. They have several factions outside prison, but all their criminal enterprises and activities are to support the main body inside prison. Some of their enterprises within prison is protection rackets of other inmates that aren't associated with other gangs, but predominantly Hispanic or other alien groups. Drugs is their biggest business. Like I mentioned before, most of these memberships originated out of the more rural Mexican working class cultures. They have done a 180. They have become more urbanized now that they're centrally located in Fresno, which is a fairly big city in central California. And like I mentioned before, they're allied with the Fresno Bulldogs. Your Aryan Brotherhood, and this is also a YouTube link. This is slide 32, and this is an in-depth look at the origins of, or not the origins, but of the Aryan Brotherhood and what they're involved in. These are several tattoos here, very symbolic. They're very racist, so you'll have, it's a neo-Nazi type of tattoo. Of course, the Irish shamrock. You'll have the swastika, the shamrock, or AB, or 666, and then AB in that tattoo there. So that's Aryan Brotherhood. This is something, just ignore this. I can't get that out. I don't know how that got in there. But anyway, that's their symbols. Their origin started from your outlaw motorcycle gangs, particularly the Hells Angels. And they were called the Diamond Tooth Gang, the Bluebird Gang in San Quentin, because some of the membership, one guy had some fake tooth, and somebody else was almost like the Birdman of Alcatraz, where he ended up, was real big on feeding birds and bringing birds in and stuff, so they called him Bluebird. It's the largest of all prison gangs. It does have affiliates across the nation, as you can see in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Idaho. They have a white supremacy style philosophy, so it's very ethno-racist. They believe in separation of the races. And they're at war with the Black Guerrilla family and the Nuestra Familia, and they'll have an occasional alliance with the Mexican Mafia, or MA. They have similar activity in prison: extortion, robbery, your protection rackets, drug trafficking, contract murder, and they have a ruling commission, so there really isn't one particular person in charge. It's a conglomerate. It's very much similar to a business style structure, but they have very strict rules and regulations. Now you've got a very racist group called the Nazi Lowriders. Obviously they're a quasi pseudo-fascist group that you have, but bent on white supremacy. Nazi Lowriders originated out of Costa Mesa in Orange County, but as these guys ended up finding themselves in prison, they of course allied themselves with AB. So they're the foot soldiers for the Aryan Brotherhood. Now you have some NLR guys that have made inroads into the command structure. So you've got a third group now of white supremacist types called Public Enemy Number 1, or PENI. They are taking over the previous responsibilities of the NLR, Nazi Lowriders, and are the foot soldiers for AB. But you have both NLR and Public Enemy Number 1 are considered your foot soldiers and enforcers for the Aryan Brotherhood. You also have another group, but it's kind of losing its momentum, called the Peckerwoods, and that's another pseudo-fascist racist group. So these groups all ally themselves with Aryan Brotherhood, and they're considered white extremists. Here's a link to, let's see, what is it? This is number 36. It's another YouTube, and this is on prison life, and it has to do with Aryan Brotherhood in the Midwest. So it shows you the reaches that this gang has. This picture here, obviously, is MS-13, where they're so heavily tatted up. It's a total commitment to the group. So check this out. Look at the video, and it shows you just kind of the complexities or lack thereof of prison life, but just the overall brutality. Okay, we're going to shift gears, go into outlaw motorcycle gangs. On this slide here is a YouTube video. It's called The History of the Hells Angels. It's a pretty in-depth, detailed look of how the gang got its start. And top 10 motorcycle gangs in the U.S. Okay, this is somebody's opinion, but Hell's Angel because it's one of the largest. But then you got the Mongols, Pagans, Outlaws, Sons of Silence, Warlocks, Highwaymen, Banditos, Free Souls, Vagos. These are all groups operating throughout the United States. So these are national outlaw motorcycle gangs. Uh, this is a link to let's see what it is. Oh, top 10 notorious biker gangs. So this gives you a resource, a little bit of it, a concentrated background on each group there. So just go ahead, click on that, and take a look at that. Other resources on this one here, this is number 39 is, oh, this is pretty good. This is a good link here. It's called Blogspot, and just like the top 10, this gives you another synopsis of what the top 10 outlaw motorcycle gangs are in the United States. So it's pretty in depth. I like it. It gives you black, white, Hispanic, different bikers, Aryan Brotherhood. So it's not only bikers; it's all sorts of different groups. So this is a really good link. So check that out. Give you a good insight on a number of these things or different groups. Your biker groups were originally formed, particularly Hells Angels, out of rowdy post-World War II veterans coming back from combat, and while they're on liberty or on leave, they were just total wild men, got away with anything they wanted to do, and they carried that over. I guess nowadays you consider they were suffering from PTSD, but nevertheless, their outlet was to ride motorcycles, disobey laws, kind of raise hell, and not have any responsibility. So that was their big thing, but they originated out of World War II. Right now, we estimate there's about 800 outlaw motorcycle groups operating in the U.S., so that's quite a number. And you can usually identify these outlaw groups. They wear their colors, their club logos or patches on the back of a leather jacket or a denim jacket. But the four most powerful right now are considered the Hells Angels, Outlaws, Pagans, and the Banditos. Vagos has got to be up there too, but I think they just don't have quite the membership that those other groups do. Your organized motorcycle groups, they meet the organized crime criteria. In fact, they have a very defined structure. They have explicit rules and regulations. They're involved in corruption of public officials and law enforcement. And their criminal enterprises revolve around illicit goods, illicit services, and money laundering. I mean, they're definitely an organized crime. They've now are in the process. They have established important relationships with important organized crime groups like your La Cosa Nostra or the Mafia, the Italian Mafia, other organized crime groups throughout the country and the world for that matter. They're involved in an array of criminal enterprises. Most of them are involved in your drug trafficking, which seems to be the foundation of the basics for them for their criminal enterprises. But murder, extortion, they're hired as assassins. Extortion, both through business and in the prison system. Arson for profit, prostitution, robbery, bombings, motorcycle theft, that's a big thing. Mail fraud, money laundering. They operate a number of massage parlors, that type of thing. I'm not, human trafficking I don't think is a big thing, mainly because of their racist ideology, but human trafficking from the standpoint of maybe prostitution and massage parlors, that would definitely be part of it. And you've got additional crimes. So yeah, human trafficking. And I kind of listed all these. Gun running's a big thing. Insurance frauds. They've turned to a lot of white collar stuff besides your basic criminal enterprises. So this is what outlaw motorcycle groups are. Check out those YouTube videos and look at those links because it gives you quite a bit of detail on what these guys are operating, what they're doing. So that's it on the audio lecture.